Welcome back, everyone. This is the Golden Era Bookworm, still on 1946, January, Your Physique. Now, this is particularly interesting. Dan Lurie challenges John Grimek. Where to even start? I really want to read this article, all of it, the whole article, including Dan Lurie's letter to John Grimek. The challenge is actually for the most muscular man in America. Just to give an introduction, and John Grimek's response is, well, he is very infuriated with the challenge itself, with Lurie's, with the fact that Lurie even dares to challenge him. And he actually writes a 2,000-word reply. Now, let me just get started. Dan Lurie questioning John Grimek's right to the title, Most Muscular Man in America. Let me zoom in. Recently challenged Grimek to challenge this title, I'm reading up here by the way, in a contest before independent judges. The challenge and the answer to the challenge have already received a great deal of publicity. Your Physique magazine, it's not really focusing. Your Physique magazine refuses to take sides in the issue, but in the interests of fair play, will publish statements by either of the men involved, provided they do not contain disparaging remarks of a personal nature. Below we present a brief statement from the challenger, Dan Lurie. To the bodybuilders of America, many of you already know that I, Dan Lurie, had the audacity to challenge the great John Grimek to a battle of muscles. Like the Daniel of many ages ago, I knew that I was stepping into a lion's den, but I hardly expected my actions would arouse the roars which since emanated from the said den. Frankly, I don't believe that I have the most muscular body in the world, or for that matter in America, but in my opinion, neither has John Grimek. I have seen too many muscular bodies to stick my neck out in this respect. On this continent, we have world champions in almost every sport you can mention, despite the fact that these world champs rarely meet contenders from other countries. In some sports, such as boxing, we have 2 or 3 world champs in the same weight right in our own country. And as for wrestling, why almost every state in the Union has its own world champ. For many years, John Grimek has been hailed as the most muscular man in the world. Perhaps this appellation is justified, but since he never won this title in official competition, who really knows? I'm up down here. Personally, I am opposed to the free use of titles which a man has never earned, and in order to rectify that in the bodybuilding game, I decided to do something about it. My original plan, which I discussed freely with more than a dozen prominent bodybuilders from different parts of the US and Canada, was to stage at my own expense a mammoth contest to determine the most muscular man in America. The contest was to be open to all comers. Invitations were to be sent to clubs and contestants throughout the continent. Details were to be published as widely as possible, and so on. The plan called for the payment of all or part of the expenses of all bona fide contestants, also at my expense. The plan was pretty well organized and all ready to put into action when I ran into a snag. Sorry, already read past. So the plan was pretty well organized. Namely, the amateur regulations covering such a contest. According to the rules of the Amateur Athletic Union of the US, I am classed as a professional, and any amateur who competes with or against me would immediately lose his amateur status. This automatically ruled me out of the contest, which is not a matter of great importance, But unfortunately, the same rule strictly interpreted would also rule out John Grimek. Therefore, a wide open competition to determine Grimek's right to the title so consistently bestowed upon him became an impossibility. Needless to say, there remained only one course open to me, and that was to challenge John Grimek personally. My challenge to him is herewith reproduced. Dear John Grimek, this is the letter. There has never been a worldwide competition to decide the holder of the title Most Muscular Man. It has been incessantly assumed that you, moving to page 52, I'm assuming it says possess or possibly, that you possess this honor at the top here. If we were considering the best physique, it is my personal opinion that you may be foremost in the field, but I'm skeptical concerning your merits as Most Muscular Man. I'm confident that if we were both subject to the close scrutiny, we will dispel any doubt as to who undeniably possesses the most muscular body. I therefore challenge your right, John Grimek, to the title Most Muscular Man in America any time before the end of the present year. Arrangements agreeable to you and myself regarding time and place and selection of judges can be made. Since this is my invitation, it will not result in any personal expense to you. An open challenge to this effect will appear in the October-November issue of Your Physique magazine. If you do not respond, it will be evident that you have rejected this challenge and that you have assumed an attitude of defeat. Your opponent in good faith, signed Dan Lurie. So this is the actual letter. To say that I got a rise out of John Grimek is putting it mildly. I had expected a polite little note of acceptance or rejection instead of a 2,000-word epistle filled with acid remarks and abusive statements hit the press. The great John sure gave little Dan an awful going over. In spite of this, I hold no ill feeling toward John Grimek. I guess he never dreamed that an insignificant runt like me would have the gall to question his right to a title he never actually earned. I am sorry for what John said, and even more sorry that it appeared in print. It shocked me to see a man who has so long stood as an idol to the he-men of this country climb down off his pedestal and try to defend himself by a barrage of insults and petty mud-slinging. Since I was responsible for this letdown by issuing the challenge, I would like to ask all of my readers not to judge Grimek too harshly. Undoubtedly, he was greatly angered at my colossal nerve, and in the heat of the moment wrote things he must certainly feel ashamed of now. I doubt it very much. I presented John Grimek with a simple, straightforward challenge and expected a simple, straightforward answer. Has John Grimek accepted my challenge? Will he defend his title in the competition against me at my expense and before independent judges acceptable to both of us? Frankly, I don't know. He said a lot in his 2,000-word blast, but I defy anyone who reads it to determine whether the answer to my challenge is yes or no. Yours for titles which are justly won, Dan Lurie. That's the article in where Dan Lurie responds to John Grimek's response to his letter. This is, in a way, related to the muscle wars. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Rick Wayne, a bodybuilder from the 60s and 70s, and author of Joe Weider for his magazines. But this points back to the Weider-Hoffman wars. Interestingly enough, recently a new movie has been announced called Bigger, where Joe Weider's life, or the Weider brothers' life you could say, is the topic of the movie. And I'm pretty sure in this movie you're going to hear about the war between Hoffman and Weider. I've read some of Hoffman's magazines, and to be to be honest, I wanted to actually start my magazine reviews with strength and health, but after reading just a couple of them, I realized he was so negative and constantly insulting Weider and his magazines. I got sick of reading all these insults and complaints and la-di-da, and so I just read one and that was enough. And you probably realize, because I've only done one video on strength and health. After that, I switched to Your Physique because I just got sick of reading Hoffman's magazines full of hatred, and it was just angry words, and it's not really nice. But yeah, this is a kind of part of it, because John Grimek was supported by the Hoffman magazines, whereas Dan Lurie, you could see, was also supported by, in a way, by the Weiders. And so this is part of that muscle war, and you'll probably hear more about it in later issues of Your Physique, and especially in the new coming movie Bigger that's about to hit cinemas in 2018. Anyway, there is much more in this challenge of Dan Lurie and John Grimek in the next magazine that I've already read, and I'll go through more of that later. Hope you enjoyed this response by Dan Lurie to John Grimek. Even though it happened 70 years ago, it's still very interesting to read. Okay, I'll move on now to the rest of the magazine. Thank you very much.